We roll on with our big swing games for each conference. Tonight we're doing the Big 12, and I did something that we haven't done so far. We're going to do 2 games for one team. So let's roll into this. The swing game is not your biggest game necessarily. The swing game is the one that when we look back at the end of the season, we circle and say, that's really what led to this result. That was the impetus for how the rest of the season ended up unfolding. Let's start with Oklahoma, the overwhelming favorite to win the Big 12. I think Oklahoma's swing game is when TCU comes into Norman week 7. This is very important from a scheduling dynamic standpoint to understand that it falls right after a stretch that sees Oklahoma go to Kansas State. And you may not really think much of that, but they do at Oklahoma because they lost to Kansas State last year. So you got the revenge spot on the road. Then you've got the game against Texas. And what comes after that 2-game stretch? You've got TCU. So if you're watching on YouTube, you see Oklahoma's entire schedule here. I know you see Iowa State down there at the bottom, and everyone's got high expectation for Texas at the quarterback position with Sark in town. But could you find me for certain on this schedule you're looking at a quarterback that's going to be better than Max Duggan? I said for sure. You could throw half a dozen of them at me you think maybe. What if Max Duggan is the best quarterback that Oklahoma faces in the regular season this year? Could be. He could be. That's not to take anything away from my guy Brock Purdy up at Iowa State, but I'm just saying with an offensive line, we have no clue what Max Duggan's going to look like because he didn't have one last year. So this could be a sneaky game here. I'm high on Oklahoma as a legitimate championship contender, okay? So when I look at this TCU game, I think to myself, a fringe playoff team could stumble here, but a legitimate championship contending team, they take care of business here. They pull away. It's 37-17 late in the fourth quarter. That's the kind of dominant performance you would expect even coming off the Texas game. So remains to be seen there. How about Texas? I got 2 games for Texas. I could not narrow it down to one. And to be honest, I didn't tell Noah this, but I gave serious consideration to sending 3 Texas games. The first one is Oklahoma State at Texas. This is in week 7. I know we got the Sooner game highlighted there, but it's Oklahoma State at Texas in week 7. And I want you to think about this, okay? This is I think it's probably the tough scheduling dynamic spot in the Big 12. You've got a stretch where Texas goes at TCU versus Oklahoma and then against Oklahoma State. If you're watching on YouTube, you can read that. If you're listening to the podcast, I'm kind of trying to lay out for you how that schedule plays out. Oklahoma State, the third in a stretch of 3 very tough games there. Coming off the Oklahoma game, the Cowboys are off a bye. So here's how Texas opens the season. They have 7 games before Texas has a bye. And this is going to be the 5th time in those first 7 games where the Horns will be a 7-point favorite or less. In some cases, they'll be an outright underdog. But what I'm telling you is there are a whole lot of losable games here. They could be undefeated. Things could go off the rails. A lot of variance. And this is going to be probably one of the big contributing factors to that. And the other Texas game I picked was week 2. I know we're kind of going in reverse order, but the second swing game for Texas is at Arkansas in week 2. How does any Texas fan look at this game and feel confident? It feels like half your roster is going to be made up of freshmen or sophomores who have never played in a packed stadium, and you're going to go into Reynolds Razorback Stadium, and, man, that's going to be a Super Bowl atmosphere for them up in Fayetteville. Make no mistake about that. And you've also got to ask yourself, even though this is only week 2, what has happened to Texas the week before at this point? They opened with Louisiana, which obviously, if you understand college football, is not your garden variety G5 FCS cream puff opener. And after this game, so those opening 2 games are tough for Texas. After that, they still have at TCU, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, at Baylor, at Iowa State, at West Virginia. So, yeah, there's still a long way to go. You come out of this 1-1 or 0-2, going to be a tough year. You come out of it 2-0, it can still be a tough year. But, man, it's important. It is vitally important for Texas to start early. Also, remember, you got a lot of big-time recruits out there, 2022, 2023, and beyond, that are wanting to see some kind of offensive validation to what they're being sold right now. Fast start, very important for Texas. How about Iowa State? Obviously, all the national attention for Iowa State is going to be focused. It's kind of late in the year. So Iowa State plays Oklahoma, what is it, like week 12 or week 13, second to last week of the year. And that's where all the national attention is going to be, because the perception is there's only one place that Iowa State can go from here. They got to beat Oklahoma, win the Big 12, make the playoff. Otherwise, they already made the Fiesta Bowl last year. Like, they already finished second. They already finished runner-up, and they won the Fiesta Bowl. And so that's where the focus is going to be. But their final 7 games are tough. And I circled their trip to West Virginia in Week 9 as their big swing game. West Virginia is on the road. It's kind of a tough one because I don't think people remember. They don't process West Virginia when they think Big 12. You just think all these teams in Texas and up through the Great Plains. And then you got West Virginia 1,000 miles away from the closest team. And so it's tough for these teams. A lot of times when they have to fly east, it's not easy on them. And it's normally an early kickoff, so that's always there too. It's a big revenge spot. West Virginia's coaching staff will tell you this is the only game they really feel like they just totally no-showed last year. They got blanked. They got it run up on them in Ames, Iowa. So this is a return trip here. They're at West Virginia, are the Iowa State Cyclones, the week before they play Texas. Big swing spot there. And lastly, how about Oklahoma State? I'm going to bring Iowa State in here again. Oklahoma State at Iowa State in Week 8. That's the big swing game to me for the Cowboys. This has been a one-possession game 6 straight years now, which I didn't know until about 45 minutes ago. It's going to be one of those classic perception versus reality games. Your perception is going to tell you Iowa State's a preseason top 10 team. Oklahoma State is not that. But yet you look at how close these games are every year, and you look at how even though Iowa State is operating at maximum efficiency right now, it's not a team loaded with the kind of athletes Ohio State has or Alabama has, meaning they can't show up, put their B-minus effort on the field, and just count on winning these kinds of games. And so it's one to watch there. Second straight road game for Oklahoma State. So their entire season could be made in this stretch. They go to Texas and they go to Iowa State. How about those two back-to-back? I think their season will be defined there now that I look at their schedule more. So those are our Big 12 swing games. Do we venture to the West Coast? I'm going to let the comment section dictate that for next week.